frightening horror stories to tell in the dark. Are you brave enough to hear these chilling horror stories that might keep you up at night? Welcome back to my channel, where the brave and the curious come to indulge in the thrill of horror stories. Tonight I've got 5 frightening tales that'll send shivers down your spine, making you question the darkness that lurks within the shadows. Get comfortable, grab a flashlight, and settle in, because we're about to dive into the darkest corners of the human experience. But be warned, once you've heard these stories, there's no going back. The memories will linger, haunting your every waking moment. So are you ready to confront the terrors that lie ahead? Let's begin our journey into the heart of horror. In the depths of the forest, there's a cabin where the trees whisper secrets to the wind. It was here that Sarah, a college student, decided to spend her summer break, documenting the paranormal activity that had haunted the cabin for decades. The cabin's history dated back to the 1800s, when a family of 4 mysteriously disappeared, leaving behind only a cryptic message etched into the wall. "They come for you when the lights go out." Sarah didn't believe it, of course. She was a skeptic, always searching for the logical explanation behind the unexplained. As the night wore on, the fire crackled and the shadows danced on the walls. It was then that Sarah heard the whispers, faint but unmistakable. "They're coming for you," the voices whispered, the soft rustling of leaves underfoot growing louder with each passing moment. The air inside the cabin grew thick, heavy with anticipation. Sarah's heart raced as she realized she wasn't alone. The whispers grew louder, the words becoming clear as day. "They come for you when the lights go out." Suddenly the lights flickered and the darkness closed in around her. That's when Sarah saw them, the silhouettes of the family that had vanished all those years ago, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. In a desperate bid to escape, Sarah stumbled through the darkness, her flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. But it was too late. They had her, their cold breath on the back of her neck as they dragged her deeper into the forest. The last thing Sarah heard was the sound of her own screams, echoing through the trees, as the lights went out forever. In the sleepy town of Ravenswood, there lived a man named Michael, who had an unusual job. He was a mortician. For years he'd been preparing the dead for their final journey, never once encountering a supernatural entity. That was until the night the corpse of a young girl named Emily arrived at his doorstep. As Michael worked on Emily's body, he noticed something strange. Her eyes seemed to be watching him, following his every move. At first, he dismissed it as his imagination, but as the night wore on, the sensation grew stronger. The mortician's hands trembled as he applied the final touches of makeup to Emily's face. That's when he heard the first whisper, a soft, childlike voice that sent shivers down his spine. "Let me go," the voice whispered, the words barely audible. Michael tried to shake off the feeling of unease, but it was too late. Emily's eyes snapped open and she sat up, her gaze fixed on the mortician. For a moment they locked eyes, Michael frozen in terror. Then Emily vanished, leaving behind a message scrawled on the mortuary table. "I'll never be buried." The mortician was left shaken, his faith in the natural order of things shattered forever. The small town of Willow Creek was never the same after the night the children disappeared. It happened during a game of hide-and-seek in the local park, their laughter and shouts replaced by an unsettling silence. The search party combed through the woods, their flashlights casting an eerie glow on the trees. But there was no sign of the children, only an ancient, crumbling statue of a man, his face twisted in a malevolent grin. As the night wore on, the statue began to change, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The search party heard the children's whispers, their voices seemingly coming from the statue itself. "Find us," they whispered, the words echoing through the trees. But as the search party drew closer, the whispers stopped, and the statue returned to its lifeless state. The children were never found, and the town was left to wonder, had they stumbled into something sinister, something that lurked just beyond the edge of reality? In the sleepy town of Oakwood, there lived a legend about a haunted manor, where the vengeful spirit of a murdered bride dwelled. The story went that if you entered the manor on your wedding night, the bride would appear, searching for her lost love. It was a dare that no one dared to take, until Emily and Ryan decided to test the legend. As they entered the manor, the creaking floorboards echoed through the empty halls, their flashlights casting an eerie glow on the walls. At first, they found nothing, just dusty furniture and cobwebs. But as they explored deeper, the atmosphere grew heavier, the air thickening with anticipation. That's when they saw her, the bride, her white gown shimmering in the darkness, her eyes black as coal. The bride began to whisper, her voice like a sigh on the wind. "Find him," she whispered, her gaze fixed on Emily. Ryan tried to intervene, but the bride vanished, leaving behind only a cryptic message etched into the wall. "Until death do us part." As the night wore on, Emily became more and more agitated, her eyes fixed on the message. Ryan tried to calm her down, but it was too late. Emily had become obsessed, her mind consumed by the bride's whispers. And when Ryan woke up the next morning, Emily was gone. The message on the wall changed to a single ominous word: forever. The town of Ashwood was built on an ancient burial ground where the native tribe had buried their dead. It was here that the legend of the Skinwalker was born, a shapeshifter that could take on any form, its true identity hidden behind a mask of human skin. The story went that if you wore the skin of the Skinwalker, you'd gain its powers, but at a terrible cost: your own humanity. The legend remained a myth, until the night a group of friends stumbled upon the Skinwalker's lair deep in the woods. As they explored the lair, they found the skin, smooth, unblemished, and alive. One of them, a thrill-seeker named Jake, couldn't resist the temptation. He put on the skin, and as he did, the atmosphere grew charged, the air crackling with electricity. At first, Jake reveled in his newfound powers, the skin granting him strength and agility. But as the night wore on, he began to feel a creeping sense of dread, the skin crawling beneath his fingers like a living entity. That's when he saw his friends, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light, their faces twisted in a hellish grin. The Skinwalker had Jake now, its true form emerging from the shadows. The last thing Jake heard was the sound of his own screams, echoing through the woods as the Skinwalker claimed its latest victim. It began on a stormy autumn night. Thunder rumbled in the distance and rain fell in relentless sheets. 4 friends decided to explore the abandoned asylum on the edge of town, a place shrouded in sinister rumors. The asylum towered before them, its shattered windows like hollow eyes watching their every move. The iron gates screeched as they pushed them open, revealing a long-forgotten path overgrown with weeds. As they entered the building, the air grew heavy. The scent of mildew and decay clung to the walls, and every step they took on the creaking floorboards seemed to echo into the void. But something else echoed too, soft whispers that seemed to come from nowhere. Despite their unease, curiosity drove them forward. They discovered a door with a rusted doorknob. The door pulsed with an almost magnetic energy, as though daring them to turn it. Inside, a dimly lit room awaited, its single light bulb flickering ominously. The walls were covered in claw-like scratches, and the faint outlines of symbols were etched into the stone. Before they could react, the door slammed shut. Plunged into darkness, their flashlights flickered and died. Whispers filled the room again, louder this time, forming words, "Get out, while you still can." They stumbled upon a journal, its pages brittle with age. As they read, they uncovered the asylum's dark history, experiments on patients that pushed them beyond the brink of madness. The journal's final entry spoke of one patient in particular who claimed he could never die. The room brightened suddenly, revealing the patient himself. His figure was gaunt, his hollow eyes staring straight into their souls. Only one friend escaped that night, but even now she swears she's not alone. The whispers still follow her, and so does the shadowy figure of the patient, waiting for her to make the same mistake. Sometimes the scariest things are the ones we see from the corner of our eye. It started with a woman living alone in her small apartment. She worked late hours, often coming home when the city was quiet. One night, as she unlocked her door, she felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched. She dismissed it as paranoia until she noticed the window across the street. Behind the glass, a figure stood perfectly still. It was dark, but she could just make out the outline of a man, his face pressed against the pane, staring directly at her. For the next several nights, the figure appeared at the same spot. She told herself it was nothing, maybe a mannequin left in a shop window. But one night as she climbed into bed, she saw him again. Only this time he was closer, standing at the window of the apartment building next door. The police found nothing unusual, but the sightings didn't stop. She installed cameras around her home, hoping to catch some evidence. What they recorded chilled her to the bone. At 3 a.m., the figure appeared not at a distance, but inside her apartment, standing at the foot of her bed. Mirrors are everyday objects, but what if they're more than just glass? A young man named Eric loved collecting antiques. One day he stumbled upon an ornate full-length mirror at a flea market. Its frame was carved with strange symbols, and its surface seemed oddly cloudy, even after he cleaned it. That night, Eric moved the mirror to his bedroom. As he lay in bed, he noticed something unsettling. His reflection didn't seem to match his movements. When he turned his head, his reflection hesitated, staring straight at him. The following nights grew worse. The reflection would step out of sync entirely, starting with a malevolent grin that Eric could not mimic. Desperate, he covered the mirror with a blanket, only to find the blanket removed the next morning. Eric decided to destroy the mirror. As he swung the hammer, the glass cracked, but instead of shattering, the reflection began to move toward him. It said Eric was never seen again. All that remained was the mirror, perfectly intact, now waiting for its next owner. Sometimes technology can connect us to things we're not meant to reach. Lena had just moved into a new apartment when she started receiving strange phone calls late at night. Each call came from an unknown number, and when she answered, she heard nothing but static. One night she decided to ignore the ringing, but her voicemail captured something chilling, a faint voice whispering, "Help me, I'm here." She called the number back, but it didn't exist. The calls continued, each more disturbing than the last. The whispers became screams, and the static seemed to carry hidden voices, begging to be heard. Lena finally contacted the phone company, only to discover something horrifying. The calls were traced to her own number, made from inside her apartment, moments before she received them. Working the graveyard shift can be isolating, but sometimes you're not as alone as you think. Mark worked nights as a security guard at an old office building. The building was nearly empty after dark, save for a few cleaning staff who rarely interacted with him. One night, as he monitored the surveillance cameras, he saw a figure standing in the middle of the empty lobby. The person wore outdated clothing, their head tilted at an unnatural angle. Mark rushed to the lobby, but it was empty. When he returned to the security room, he froze. The figure was now on the camera feed for his room, standing directly behind him. The next morning, Mark quit his job, but he's never been able to shake the feeling of being watched. In small towns, some traditions are better left undisturbed. Claire moved to a picturesque village known for its quaint cottages and cobblestone streets. She loved her new home, but her neighbors had one rule: never let the candle in the window burn out. Curious but skeptical, Claire decided to test the superstition. One night she blew out the candle before going to bed. At exactly midnight, she woke to the sound of heavy footsteps coming down the hall. When she opened her bedroom door, she saw muddy footprints leading from the window to her bed. In the faint moonlight, she could make out a shadowy figure sitting at the foot of her bed, watching her. From that night on, Claire kept the candle burning and never dared question the tradition again. Some roads lead to places you should never go. James was a rideshare driver, working late nights to make extra cash. One rainy evening, he received a request from a desolate road near the edge of town. When he arrived, a woman in a pale dress climbed into the back seat. She didn't speak, only nodding when he confirmed her destination, a remote location he'd never heard of. The ride was silent except for the sound of rain tapping on the windows. James glanced in the rearview mirror, but the woman's reflection wasn't there. Panicked, he pulled over to look back, only to find the back seat empty. A chill ran down his spine when his app dinged, signaling the ride had ended. The address? It was his own home. Sometimes a smile isn't as friendly as it seems. Late one night, Emma was walking home through an empty park. The air was thick with fog, muffling the sounds of the city. As she crossed a dimly lit path, she noticed a man standing under a streetlight. He wore an old-fashioned suit, his posture unnervingly rigid. But it was his face that sent a chill through her. His grin stretched impossibly wide, his teeth gleaming in the dim light. Emma quickened her pace, but the man began following her, his footsteps echoing unnaturally loud. No matter how fast she walked, he kept the same distance, his grin never faltering. When she finally reached her apartment and locked the door, relief washed over her. But as she turned to head inside, she froze. The man was standing outside her window, grinning at her through the glass. Sharing a home with a stranger can be unsettling, but what if that stranger doesn't exist? Sarah had just moved into a new apartment, sharing it with a roommate she had never met in person. Her roommate, Claire, worked odd hours and left cryptic notes around the apartment. "Don't open the closet after midnight," or "keep the blinds closed." At first, Sarah thought it was just Claire's quirky sense of humor, but strange things started happening. She'd hear footsteps at night, doors creaking open, and faint whispers coming from the closet. One day, Sarah decided to confront Claire, but when she searched the apartment, she realized something chilling. There was no sign of anyone else living there. The lease had her name alone, and the notes had vanished. That night, she awoke to find her closet door open and a shadowy figure standing inside. A whisper reached her ears. "You should have followed the rules." So which story sent the most chills down your spine? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more spine-tingling content. If you're feeling brave, click the link in the description to explore more terrifying tales. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the